In this demonstration, I'm going to show you how you can use the Select and Mask feature in Photoshop. So one of the things that we want to do first off with this image is we want to make it so that this background is going to be the background behind this person. But you'll notice that there are a lot of details in this image where there are a lot of like sort of strands of hair that are a little bit messy, and it would be hard to clean that up in a way that would look really natural, so we're going to keep a lot of that. So the first thing that I want to show you how to do then is you would go to use the quick selection tool right here, and the next thing you do is you would click on Select and Mask, and the first thing you'll notice that is happening is that it looks, you can sort of barely see the top layer, which is the female figure. And that is because it automatically is going to apply what's referred to as the onion skin, which is this layer right here. You can look at different versions, like, this is a sort of more traditional red mask on a dim black or on white. And really, it just depends on what it is that you're trying to do. We're going to start in onion skin first, and we'll drop the transparency down somewhat so that we can kind of see what we've got. But we can also still see the background a little bit. So the first thing I want to do is I like to turn on Smart Radius. It's usually very helpful. And you want to adjust your brush size if it's not already adjusted. You don't want it to be too big. I'm probably going to put mine somewhere in the ballpark of 20. And then the hardness, I'm going to keep it turned all the way up. And then if I click, you'll start to see that I'm selecting the female figure, and it sort of actually makes really smart selections. So far, it's pretty good all the way around the edges. But then you'll notice that around the hairline there might be some problems, and it looks like we have a little bit here in the torso area. I think I might have gotten a little bit too much, but the thing that's nice is because I have Smart Radius turned on, it actually does some auto correction for me. And then if you blow it up, I have mine blown up around 250% right now. You can kind of look around the edges and see how they are. First thing that you'll notice is that like some of this goes away. Like if I turn the transparency of it all the way up, you start to see that a lot of the hair gets chopped off and it sort of looks disintegrated. And so we'll turn that back down a little bit so that we can see what we've got for the onion skin anyway. And then I'm going to start to use some different tools. You'll notice over here in this left panel, while we're in the select and mask mode, right now the quick selection tool is chosen. But if you look down here, there's a refine edge brush tool. If we click on that, and I'm going to leave my brush size around 14–15%, something like that. I can go over here and I can start to add. If I draw on here, I'll even blow this up so you can see it better, where I can draw into this hairline area, right? And it starts to come up a little bit more, and you start to see some of that coming out. And then you can also draw in here where the sort of those finer hairs are, and you see that it's pretty intelligent in the way that it starts to delineate the colors of the pixels, and it starts to pull some of this stuff out a little bit better. All right, and so you can kind of come in here and start to effectively adjust this. And then the other thing too down here is if I come in here, it will start to detect the difference of these edges, so it's refining the mask in that way too. And then I can come along these edges and find anything that didn't seem to work the first time around. And I think that I just made this a problem. I'm going to undo what I just did. And at this point, it looks like, let's see, if I turn this all the way up, yeah, it looks like this sort of is a little bit disintegrated looking. So if I jump back to the selection tool, the quick selection tool, I can select a little bit more. That's a little bit too much. Let me undo that. I can select a little bit more of this background if I want to. The other thing too that you can do is if you don't like the way that it's working, then you can also jump over here to the lasso tools, and you could use polygon lasso, for instance, if you wanted to be really specific about the edge over here. It's kind of up to you. So I'm not going to use that for right now. And then this tool right here is the brush tool. So you could also use the brush tool. Let me lower my brush size, and you can be really specific about what you paint in. All right, so if I wanted to use that because I didn't feel like the refine edge tool was working very well, I could always come back with my brush tool and I could be very explicit about what I wanted to fill in. All right, so let's take a look around here, and this might also be the same instance where it started to degrade the edge a little bit, so I can come in and I can just paint that edge up if I want it to be very explicitly defined. And then, you can also come around and look at the rest of the face, and you'll start to notice there's some places maybe in the hairline. If I want to go back to this refine tool, and I can come in here and I can start to adjust it a little bit so that I can get some of this extra material that's up in her hairline. And you can kind of go on the outside, just on the outside edge, to get some of that information. I'm not going on the inside because I don't want to, like, seemingly start to erase anything. And I'll go up along this edge too. You see what it starts to pick up a little bit, and there's a little bit more detail in there. Okay, and it looks like I'm in a pretty good spot with this, I think. All right, so if I wanted to zoom back out now, all right, I can take a look and see what I've got. If I turn, that's with my transparency turned all the way up, so that's not too bad. If I wanted to take some of this other material in here, I could try to get some of that. And I think that that kind of starts to look okay. All right, and so this is what we've got. Now, one of the things that you can also look at, before we say that we're done here, let's blow this back up again, and you'll notice that there's like a bit of a halo around her nose and the front of her face. I don't know how well you can see it, but there is sort of a light colored halo. And so if you wanted to try to get rid of some of that, you can use some of the global settings over here for edge detection. And let's go ahead and adjust, for instance, like if we shift the edge, we can shift the edge in so that we start to get rid of that halo. And you can start pulling the edge in, and you can see, I don't know if you can tell, but the halo started to disappear a little bit. Let's get it about right there. So right now it's at about negative 17%. If I put that back to 0, you can see how light colored it is here, right? But if I wanted to take this slider down for shifting the edge so that shifts it in, I can start to shift it in somewhere in this ballpark, right? And then if you do that, you might look at some of the edges here and go, well, maybe I need to increase the contrast now to bring more of it out. Maybe that's a little heavy somewhere in there. But now it looks a little bit crisp, even though, I mean, granted, I'm at almost 700% of the image. I can also smooth it just a little bit. I could add a little bit of smoothing on the edge. And so if I go back down, that looks pretty darn good. And then you have to make sure that it didn't, when you did that, it didn't adjust the hairline in a way that is unsatisfactory to you. So you might look at this and you might make a decision that some of this isn't going to work as well. So maybe I'll shift the edge back out a little bit. And I think that that's probably pretty good. Maybe I'll lower the contrast a little bit. Okay, and so I think I'm probably fairly happy with the way that this looks right now. And before we output this, I want to show you now real quickly too. This is where you could, if you really wanted to test and see, what it looked like. If you go here to black and white, you can really start to see the difference a lot better. I don't know if you had, tested it on the black and white before, but it was the edges weren't as soft and the detail wasn't as fine. And so now you can start to really see some of that information coming back out in the black and white area. And like if you were to come in here and say, well, like up in this area, it's a little bit slight. You could come in with the brush tool, and I'm going to lower my brush size. Here, let's even zoom in more if I can. Oh, it won't let me. But I'm going to lower my brush size, and I could come in here and I could paint some of that, but that's that's going to be a little bit too harsh, right? And so if you looked at the way that actually looked inside of your onion skin, that doesn't look so good, right? So that's where you kind of would have to be able to jump back and forth. I'm going to undo that. Jump back and forth between the different layers, or not layers, but the different views, and see what's actually working for you and what's not. Okay. Now, if I'm pretty happy with some of this, I can go ahead and uh, set this so that I'm going to do the output settings. I can choose to decontaminate color, and you see what happens to the edge is it starts to fill in some of the edge. And what this is going to do when you say decontaminate colors, it's going to regenerate new pixels, and we're going to make a new output where it says output to new layer with layer mask. And so that's what we want to do. We'll go ahead and choose this setting, and by doing decontaminate colors, it's actually going to generate brand new pixels, and it's going to make it look a little bit different. So we'll go ahead and click OK. And then when it did that, it allowed me here to have my original model layer, and now this is what I've got. So I would, at this point, want to go ahead and save. All right, so you could do save or save as. I'm going to do save as, and I'll call this working. Okay. And then that way it preserves my original start PSD. Okay, and from this point, I think I'm in a pretty good place with the way that my exterior selection is.